All right, so now we are at the top layer of the OSI model. So we started from the physical layer. We know what is the job of the physical layer, data link layer, network layer, transport layer. Now is we are at the application layer, which is the highest level of, which is at the top of the OSI layer, okay? Now, so this is what we're going to cover this topic, the explanation of application, presentation, and session layer. Now, the reason we will talk about all three layers in one lesson, because the job of these three layers is very similar, okay? Even though there are three different layers, but they function very similar duties. They perform very similar duties, so they're combined actually in most of the documents. So, well, peer-to-peer communication, you guys already know, and then we'll talk about some file sharing and IP addressing services. Okay. So all these three layers combined defines what is the function of the defines the function of application layer. Okay. So first of all, the application layer deals directly with the user. So whatever application that you use, for example, the web browser, web browsers works with application layer, and the user directly use the web browser. Unlike, for example, network card, the user does not have direct interaction with the network card. Okay. But application layer services or applications, they are directly interface with the user. Okay. And also it provides the interaction between the application, okay, to communicate. And so some of the most very well known application protocols are HTTP, that you guys have heard of, FTP, TFTP, IMAP, and DNS. So these are considered the application layer services. Okay. Now, the two other layers, presentation and session, they're also very important because, so presentation, the job of the presentation is to format the data that both sender and receiver can understand. It also does compression. Okay. So sender compress the data, and the receiver at the destination the data has to be decompressed, which is the job of the session layer. And it also provide encryption, session layer. So any communication that require, it adds the encryption to any unencrypted communication. Okay. Sorry, it's the presentation layer. I was keep saying session. Sorry. So the presentation layer perform these functions. Okay. So what are the common what are the common applications that works with the session layer? Are these videos, MPEG, movies, okay, graphic interchanges, okay, portable network graphics. These are all mostly graphic applications. All right. That works with the presentation layer. So if you guys notice, I don't know if you guys still confused about the function of the OSI model, but we are going, we are covering each layer, so you understand this whole, anything that you do on the network that has to deal, any task has to deal with one layer of the OSI model. Every single task is defined. okay? And the other layer is the session layer, okay? It creates a session, meaning it maintains the conversation between source and destination application, okay? So it initiates the dialogue and keep them active. So whenever you're, for example, watching a video, okay, is the session layer that actually initiates the conversation. Like in people, when we talk to each other, one person has to initiate, right? So this is the job of the session layer, okay? And it also keep this conversation active. And if there's a disruption in the conversation, it is responsible to restart the conversation. And when we're talking about conversation, we're talking about any exchange of data between sender and the receiver. It could be a video, it could be a movie, it could be a file, any type of exchange. So one of the most common TCP application layer protocols are the DNS. I'm sure everybody knows what DNS is, DHCP and HTTP, okay? Now, what you need to remember are the port numbers, okay? So DNS, domain name service, it uses TCP and UDP protocol, and the port number is 53, okay? And well, you guys know what DNS does, I'm sure, okay? Then you have DHCP assign IP addresses automatically. It also, the client uses port 68 and the server 67. Why do you need to know the ports? Remember, I told you the ports are important for a server to recognize what service is being asked, what he has to, what's the serve. Either it's a DHCP request or the DNS request or a web page. HTTP uses TCP port 80 and 8080. You guys know what, HTTP is a protocol that displays web pages, hypertext on your computer. Anybody know what, okay, no. Client server, okay, well, client server, you have a server that serves the client. And all the resources, excuse me, all the resources are stored on the server, and client, they access those resources. Resources could be a database, email, web page, files, any type of resources, videos that you access. In a peer-to-peer network, you don't have a dedicated server. Each computer is a client and a server, both, meaning each computer has something to share. Okay. What else about peer-to-peer application? So yeah, it allows an application to serve both as a client and a server. So you guys are probably familiar with this peer-to-peer application, BitTorrent. I don't know if it's still being used. I haven't used it in ages. I don't know. So BitTorrent is a peer-to-peer application where there's no dedicated server. That's why when you download something from BitTorrent, it downloads from many computers. Okay. And you're also and people can also download from your computer at the same time. So that's what your computer and other computer are both acting as client and the server. Well, there's also a server in BitTorrent, but it's not being used to actually store all the data. Okay, that's why it was before difficult to track. Okay, so you guys probably well already know what HTTP is. What it does is it displays web pages that are written in hypertext language. Okay, so this protocol actually displays HTTP hypertext pages. And it works with hypertext markup language such as HTML, and there are many other languages now. That is, like, simple HTML language is not enough to show you the modern web pages. So there are other languages that are also being used, such as Java. You guys have done Java, so probably you create some Java script. Okay, so HTTP display pages, and HTTPS is just a secure version of HTTP. So whatever the conversation between client and the server is encrypted. That's why any website where you have to enter personal information uses HTTPS. Okay. So there are three types of HTTP messages. GET, it's a client that requests the data. POST is the web server uploads data files such as data form, right? So it posts, it uploads. And PUT is and it upload resources such as image or the video, or that's what. So this is these are the three common messages used by HTTP and HTTPS protocol. All right, so the other application layer protocols are email protocols. Two protocols are required to send and receive email. One is SMTP, is used to send email, and the other two protocols are called POP, Post Office Protocol, and Internet Messaging Protocol. These protocols are responsible to receive email. So there's a protocol to send email, and there's a protocol to receive email. Now, what's the difference between SMTP, POP, and IMTP? So SMTP connects with the server using port 25. Okay. So once the connection is made, client attempt to send email to the server. When the server receives the email, it either places the message in the local account or forward a message to another email server, because all these different email server are connected to each other. Okay. So if the server is busy, it just spool the messages and send it later. Sometime, I don't know. Let's say just the other day, I sent an email to one of my colleague, one of the teacher, and we are both in school, and he did not receive it for at least 10 minutes. Okay. And we were both using the same LB Pearson account. So it just means that the server was busy. Okay. Sometimes it sent instantaneously, and sometimes it takes time because the server is busy. So I don't know, it was probably the path it took. So it was. Now, one of the okay, I don't know if you guys are old enough to use post office protocol. In the beginning, like even me, I haven't used it in many years. For example, you have a service provider, for example, Bell, and they give you an email account. Okay. It was before Hotmail, the popularity of Hotmail and all these internet email accounts. Okay. And so they give you an email account, and this email account is actually run on their on the ISP server, email server. So every time you access your email, okay, your email is downloaded on your computer and it's deleted from the server. I remember it was such a pain. So if you're at home, you access your email, and this email is actually stored on your computer. So you cannot access that email from another location or another computer. So you go to work, you check your email, you will not be able to see those emails that you have already seen at home. It seems impossible these days, right? So that is the function of post office protocol. Okay, some companies still use it for security reason. Okay, but now the most common protocol is IMAP, Internet Messaging Protocol, where like these modern days, these your Gmail account, your Hotmail, Microsoft account, where your email is stored on Microsoft server or the Google server, and whether you access your email or not, they always stays on the server. That's why you're able to access your email from any location. Okay, so that's the job of IMAP. All right. So as you know, domain name translate IP addresses to the fully qualified domain name. Okay. If it wasn't for DNS, we would have to memorize all these IP addresses. Okay. So have you guys probably in Windows, you have already done Microsoft Active Directory, so you probably have already covered DNS, because you cannot install Active Directory without installing DNS and without understanding DNS. So maybe it's just a review. So there are different type of records, right? So an A record is the IP address of the device. The NS record is authoritative name server, meaning the server that is doing the translation from IP address to the domain name. It could be the ISP server, or you could have your own DNS server. Okay. And then AA is IP version 6 address, and MX is exchange record. Okay. Anyway, we are not gonna go into the detail of DNS function. This is not part of this course. It's just a review or basic knowledge, and this is also included in this because DNS is application layer services. And since we are talking about application layer, so this is the format of DNS messages. The question is the question for the name server, answer resource record. I don't know if you guys know what a resource record is. It's the record of all the translation IP address and the name, and then authority. Okay, which DNS server is actually storing that name and record, and then you have additional information. Okay, again, you have different .com, .org, different type of authorities. So, well, I guess it's very difficult to get a domain name in a .com. Most of the names are taken. Okay, even made up name like my company, Infomas, I just made it up. Infomas, it's not a word, it's not an English language word or anything, and even it was taken. So I had to register as infomas.ca, okay, as a country, but I would rather have infomas.com. So most in the .com domain, most of the names are taken. And a lot of people made a lot of money. They just registered hundreds of thousands of different names. Now every name you try, somebody owns it and they're selling it. Depending on the name, if it's a real world, they charge you more. If it's just a made up word like mine, they charge you less. Okay. So those of you who are trying to, who are interested in being a freelancer, I remember we talk about it in a career management course. Okay, that uh, you can also sell your services. Now you have some skills, you can sell it. Everybody use computer, everybody use there are companies, even individual, and there are a lot of our former graduates, they are working as freelancer. Okay. uh, Being a freelancer, one of the things that you have to do, you have to market yourself. And these days, in order to market yourself, you have to have a website. Okay. And I explain it to how you can create a free website using Google site. My site is also hosted on the Google server. Okay, so if you are hosting your own, creating your own website, uh, uh, then you have to know the basics of DNS, because you have to register your DNS name. So yeah, if you're planning, sometime it's only, sometime there's a special offering by these DNS register companies. So sometime you can register a name for $1 a year. Okay, so my suggestion is at least register one name. Okay, you never know, in the future you would have your own company, and then at that probably time you will not be able to find the name that you like. NS lookup command is used to troubleshoot DNS problem. First of all, it tells you if the DNS is configured, even though you see it when you type IP config, you see the DNS server address, but it could be the wrong DNS server. So if you cannot access a website by their domain name, problem, maybe you don't have the right DNS server configured. So this is the command you use to troubleshoot DNS problem. Okay, that could be the question. This question can be asked during a job interview. One of the very common question, okay, that I have heard from students. Everybody know what the DHCP is. It assigns IP address to the client. When a computer that is configured with the DHCP protocol, meaning when you choose obtain IP address, automatically your computer start, it sends a broadcast to the network. The closest DHCP server respond, meaning respond to that broadcast and then offer you an IP address. And the client accepts the offer. Once it accepts the offer, then the DHCP server leaves an IP address. Okay. Now, one of the thing about the DHCP server, you could have multiple DHCP server on the network, but that poses a problem. Okay, because when a client requests an IP address, the DHCP server that is physically closest to the client will respond, and the client will get an IP address from that DHCP server. But maybe this DHCP server is not in the same subnet as you, so or the servers that the client need to access. So the client will not be able to access those network services. Okay. So you have to make sure that in your network, there's only one DHCP server. One student, I don't know how long ago, he brought in a wireless router. And as you guys know, wireless router has DHCP enabled by default. So he attached to the network in the class. Okay, that's why I don't allow personal devices in school. So he attached to the network to one of the network port. Okay, and what happened is nobody has access to the internet in the class. Everybody is uh, shut out. And when I look at their IP addresses, I ask them, okay, check your IP addresses, and the IP addresses from was different. And what happened was, because the school DHCP server is physically located further, so everybody obtained an IP address from this router, and obviously it wasn't connected to the internet, so nobody was able to access the internet. Okay, and that's what we're going to talk about when we talk about port security on switch. So in the company, for that reason, you disable all the ports that are not being used, so somebody can simply disrupt your network by just attaching a wireless router to your network. So these are okay. We don't have to worry go into the detail. These are the different DS. This is the DHCP process. I explain it. Client sends a DHCP discover message. Okay, to look for the DHCP server. Then DHCP server offer a lease. Then client request this lease. Okay, and then DHCP actually finally send the IP address to the client. Okay. One of the protocol that was commonly used on the internet is a file transfer protocol. What this protocol does is it exchange files between hosts. Okay. It was commonly used to uh, uh, to distribute file on the internet. Like Microsoft use it. It's still the companies that sell software. Okay, and then they want users to try their softwares. So they set up a file transfer FTP server where they upload all the files that users can download. So it was very common practice, but now most of the companies are using HTTP. Okay, but before there was a separate site, like you had a HTTP Microsoft.com, and then you had a site ftp.microsoft.com. You go to the FTP site, you will just see the list of files that you can download, and probably there still exist. So if you go on the internet, type FTP sites, maybe you'll have a lot of. It's just because it's a very simple way to exchange file on the internet. Okay, and FTP port uses port 20. Okay, so SMB protocol is a protocol that is used on the local area network to share file. On the internet is file transfer protocol, and in the local area network is SMB. So when you go to a shared computer on a network and you see shared resources, this is the job of SMB protocol. It displays the resources and it enable access to those resources. Okay. So yeah, this is the end of